Hello, I'm Dana Levenberg, member of the Assembly for the 95th Assembly District. Welcome to my podcast series, Building Healthy Communities. My mission as a legislator is to build healthy communities in every sense of the word, environmentally healthy, economically healthy, physically and mentally healthy, all through the lens of equity. Typically on this podcast, I speak with the leaders, advocates, and others who are helping to build healthy communities here in AD 95 and beyond. In this episode, we're doing something a little different. We're going to highlight issues that are most important to you, my constituents. Today, I'm joined by my district office staff, my chief of staff, Victoria Caffarelli, and director of communications, Acacia Moriello. Together, we will go through the most common inquiries and comments that our office has received so far in my first term. We'll discuss how we're responding to each issue, shedding some light on how state government can work to really help build healthy communities. If you have a question or a need or a comment for me, the best way to do it is to send it to us via our online contact form, which you can find on my website, and we'll also link it in the podcast description. All right, ready to get started, my fantastic staff?
Let's do it.
All right. So Acacia is our office's de facto data manager. Acacia, approximately how many messages do we receive per month, would you say?
So last year, we got more than 12,000 messages from constituents by phone, email, or in person. And as of today, 3 weeks into March 2024, I've counted a little under 3,000. So we'll probably pass 3,000 by the end of the month. So on average, we get about 1,000 per month. On normal days, the district office gets between 12 and 15 phone calls. Occasionally it's more, but that's a normal day. And most of the messages we receive are emails or messages that come in through the contact form.
Wow, that is a lot. And what is the number one issue that all of these people are writing and calling about? What would you say?
Victoria should talk about the number one issue we get calls about.
Okay.
But the number one issue that people have written to us about, hands down, was the Save the Hudson legislation.
All right. Go ahead.
They really don't like pollution in our river. They don't like corporations polluting our river. And they're grateful to you and Senator Harcum for standing up to Holtec and on other issues too, like the barges before and PCBs now.
Yeah, and just again to remind people, our Save the Hudson legislation, which passed, was to make sure that we keep the radioactive waste from the closing of Indian Point out of the Hudson River. And that's what people were very upset about. I think there was a petition that was circulated. We got almost 500,000 signatures on that. And again, as you mentioned, so many calls, so many emails, and again, mostly emails on that. All right. So anyway, I'm very excited that we've been working on addressing some of those very serious issues to keep our Hudson River clean after all these many years of working to do so. Victoria, what would you say the number one issue that we get calls about?
I would say definitely the number one issue, especially this time of year, are roads. So we have people who call about potholes most of the time, but also other immediate and long-term safety issues that they observe on our state roadways, and sometimes county and local roads as well. And sometimes they just reach out with their ideas about how to make our roads and our communities more safe and more accessible for all users of our roads, from pedestrians to cars, cyclists. It's really great to hear people's suggestions and their concerns.
Well, I have to say, I really agree with those callers, because I've been out on the roads and it is like, a minefield out there of potholes. And I know that this is an issue that I've been personally working on since I started in office. It is somewhat of an intractable issue as far as I can see, but we are making progress. And I am excited because I know that, I think we're actually going to start seeing some significant changes, at least to Route 9A. But I know that there's other routes throughout the district. And one of the things that I do want to say is that my colleagues and I have been pushing hard to get more road and bridge funding overall, and there is more in our One House budget, which I'll talk a little bit more about, just because that's where we are in the process right now as we're recording this. So we've been also really pushing to make sure that the DOT Region 8, which is where we are here in the Lower Hudson Valley, gets its fair share, because really for many, many years, we've seen unfair shares going out to different areas around the state. And we want to make sure that we really do get the money we need, because as a result of that, Region 8 is considered by by road gradings, the worst region in New York State. So I am pushing for the final budget to include a guarantee that at least 100 million of the new funding comes to our area to make up for those years of underfunding. Victoria, what should people do if they see potholes or other issues that need to be addressed ASAP?
Well, just as an FYI for people who may not know, I would say the number one road we do get phone calls about is Route 9A in Ossining and Briarcliff. And we have some great news that sections of 9A are going to be paved this spring. So I was just emailing with our contact with the DOT. And so we're expecting that project to get underway very, very soon. So we're very excited to see that. And funding permitting, hopefully they'll be able to extend the project a little bit further south into Briarcliff as well to address some of the areas as well.
And I know that
So
they do wait for the paving
yeah,
shops to open up. So it's not like, again, like what we see now is really the patching, because when those yards open up and they can start getting into the real big projects, then they will, but they can't really do it until it warms up a little bit. I mean, today it's still 32 degrees outside. So, we have to make sure that the weather is conducive to those big repaving projects. So we're very happy that we're hoping that that is going to get done. So I'm sorry, keep going. I know I interrupted you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of potholes and trash, the best way to get in contact with the DOT, and we have heard this directly from the Region 8 staff that we deal with very frequently, is to call the 1-800 pothole number to identify the location of the issue, whether it be potholes or an area with a lot of litter and trash on the side of the road. That enables the DOT to track the calls that they're receiving and route them to be dealt with in the local area and devote resources to where they're needed most. I know I've even done this myself, driving back and forth from my house on Route 9 in Ossining, noticed a couple potholes, called the number, and I was happy to see that the potholes I reported were fixed within a couple of days. So it really does work. But please continue to comment, share with us as well. If you see an area that has repeated potholes that needs a little more attention, we're happy to reach out to the DOT. I email with their office very frequently. We have also invited them down to our district to see some of
Yes, we
the
have.
areas that are
Absolutely.
routine problems, and it was a very informative visit. And so we're happy to be a conduit to the DOT as well. But the easiest way to get some of these more day-to-day issues addressed, like potholes and trash, is to call 1-800 pothole.
Right. And the other thing I will say is that, the trash is very serious around here. And again, we really did do a drive around the district with the director of our region to really make sure that he saw with his own eyes, as well as his staff, where some of the biggest and long-standing issues were, and really, I think it made an impression. So let's talk a little bit about what other types of things people reach out to us about. And Victoria, maybe you have some more suggestions of those types of issues, or
Sure. Yeah,
whatever people call
we
them.
get phone calls all the time from different community organizations inviting you or our office to participate in community events. We also have people who report problems and issues that they're experiencing. Sometimes it's about getting unemployment or registering with the unemployment system, having a difficulty reaching somebody in a particular state agency. Housing issues are another big issue that we get phone calls about, and difficulty finding affordable housing specifically is very important. We have also heard from folks with unexpected rent increases and other issues relating to housing. Also, if you are having issues navigating a state agency, feel free to call us and let us know. Sometimes we have contacts that are a little easier to reach, or we can help escalate your issue or help direct you to the right person who can help. I know sometimes it's a little difficult to understand which level of government is responsible for which issue or which agency, and we're always happy to talk to you and help navigate you to the right place and connect you with the right people to hopefully get your issue addressed. We always try as hard as we can. We don't always have the answer, but we always try as hard as we can to get you to the right person.
And I appreciate all the work that you both do so much, really trying to help people and just navigate each individual issue. I will say that, you did mention housing. And in addition to the work that we're doing in the context of the budget, which again, sometimes there's significant legislation that can be part of the budget, and while we try to avoid a lot of policy, if it's tied to things that are going to cost a great deal of money, and or if it's something that the governor is trying to accomplish, this is her best tool to get something big done. We have been trying to get something big done, as has the governor, with housing, but we haven't necessarily been able to figure out how to move forward. So while we're working on the budget, I'm hopeful that we will see, as our speaker often says, all the legs of the three-legged stool, which is making sure that we build more, making sure that as we do, that we are fairly paying our labor, and all the people who are involved in building, and also making sure that we have tenant protections in place, so that people who are renters, they have something that they can is predictable and fair in terms of how rents get adjusted, for a variety of reasons. So we're really working hard on those three pieces in the budget. Outside of that, I have been working with Assemblymember Chris Burdick, who is in the 93rd Assembly District, really trying to address some of the issues that were kind of came up in a little bit in the housing compact that the governor had introduced last year, but got a lot of pushback in communities across Westchester, mostly because of home rule, which is saying that each community should be able to kind of determine for themselves what works best for each community. So Assemblymember Burdick and I have a package of 3 bills that we introduced recently, dealing with comprehensive plans, housing needs assessments, and housing action plans for everyone. And we're really looking to empower localities to think critically about where and how they can add housing to make things more affordable for the people who already live here, and also for the people that we'd like to have living and working here. And when I said we like to have, it's really people who would like to be living and working here. We know we need to make it easier and more accessible for people to live where they work, so that they can get to their jobs on time. And that's something that we really, again, need to take into account as we're looking at housing action plans for all. So, Acacia, back to email. Since we get so many, what are the next 9 issues that people have written to us about besides Save the Hudson?
All right. Well, in descending order, so most to least, they are.
I'm just having a little hard time hearing you. Can you come a
Oh,
little closer?
I'm going to come a
Thanks.
little closer. So in descending order, from most to least, they are fully funding public schools and programs like BOCES, pension reform for public employees like police officers and teachers, childcare funding, so people asking for funding to pay childcare workers more and to reduce costs for families, elder care funding, so people asking for funding for things like the long-term care ombudsman, home and community-based services, things like that. Now, as a category, environmental issues are actually the #1 thing that people send us comments about. But individual pieces of legislation or budget items like New York Heat, clean water infrastructure, the Environmental Protection Fund, creating a new climate and community protection fund, those individual issues come in behind the issues I just mentioned. But in general, environmental issues seem to be top of mind for folks in our district. And that also came up in our last survey. So a majority of respondents there too said the environment was a top concern for them. After that comes Medicaid and Medicare issues. Sorry, did you have something to say?
No, keep going, keep going. Why don't you get all the way through? Because I just want to comment on some of those sure. After you finish. Yep, go ahead.
Sounds good. So Medicaid and Medicare issues come next. People reach out, particularly now during budget time in particular, to comment on sections of the budget related to those. Then funding to support programs and services for people with disabilities. Roads again. So again, we mostly get phone calls about that, but we also get emails about them, especially again during this budget season. There's been a lot about Region 8 funding. And then lastly, hunger relief. There I'll lump together 2 different types of messages. There's messages supporting certain programs like the Hunger Prevention and Nutrition Assistance Program, HPNAP, and also increasing the minimum SNAP benefit, things like that. And then there's also people urging us to fully fund universal school meals. So a lot of emails about those things. So that rounds out the top 10.
Great. So yeah, I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of those issues. Right now, again, as I mentioned, as we're recording this, we're in the process in the budget where the governor has, issued her budget and her first round of 30-day amendments, and then the Assembly and the Senate both responded to the governor's budget by issuing their own version of the budget, again in response to that. And there's quite a few things where, and it's very typical. This really happens every year. It's a little bit of a dance where everybody sort of says they have different predictions for what the revenue will be, as well as what our expenses should be and where we should be spending our money. And it really is, a moral document, as we like to say. The budget really says where are our priorities, and certainly school funding has been at the top of the discussion item because we finally got foundation aid fully funded in last year's budget, and now it seems like foundation aid is no longer fully funded, and that's basically because the governor changed the way that the funding was calculated, and she also took out the hold harmless agreement that would basically keep school districts from going backwards, from receiving less funding than they had received the year prior, to make it more predictable for schools. We do know that things have changed. The landscape has changed. There have certainly been enrollment decreases throughout the state. And so we know that we really need to find a path forward to make sure that that big bucket of funding that we put into schools every year is distributed in a way that makes sense. So what we've been fighting for in the Assembly and actually in the Senate and is in our one houses is to restore the foundation aid formula to and the way that the CPI was calculated this year, which was, the inflation was looked or the consumer price index was looked at it in a 10-year average instead of just sort of like what it was last year. And that's really, obviously, with the inflation as it's been, that's going to change the reality. So as school districts are still trying to keep up with inflation, even as we're seeing it maybe level off, the money coming in to look like it's covering an inflationary percentage from, an average that's averaging when it was very, very low, kind of doesn't really make sense. And it really hurt 337 school districts from the governor's budget. So in our one houses, we've restored it and said we really need to look at a new formula, a new foundation aid formula. Our foundation aid formula is 20 years old. Besides census numbers changing, and maybe the formula keeps up with that, needs have changed. We know how much it takes to the cost for a special needs child or an English language learner, and we have to really look at the reality of how all of these different inputs affect the formula and affect how we fairly educate all of our children and make sure that the funding is fairly distributed. But we can't just change the formula or the way that we approach it midstream and pull the rug out from under school districts. So that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for something that makes sense, to look at the formula. Let's change the way that we're calculating it so that it keeps up with the times, and then then figure out a bridge to get there. We're also, we are looking at some pension help for tier 6 and making adjustments, which is, again, for those who are public employees, understand that there's been different tiers of pensions that have been introduced over time, and if you were hired in the last, I can't remember exactly how many years, you're in tier 6, which definitely had a lot fewer benefits than any of the tiers before that, 1 through 5. So there's been a lot of talk about trying to adjust tier 6 and make it a little bit better, because a lot of times people will enter public service because they can know that they can look forward to that nest egg being helped out by that pension system. But if you can't really rely on that, and you need to work a lot more or a lot of other jobs, then it's disincentive to be a public employee. So we really need to look carefully at that. And we have made some adjustments to that in our one houses, the Senate and the Assembly. Child care funding, we fully restored and added back, really trying to help make sure that child care workers can afford to live, and also that the costs for families are also um, low enough that they can afford them and can continue to work and put their kids in childcare. Elder care funding also, we've added and restored money for the long-term care ombudsman program and added more to it. We've also added, and to make sure that there's no waiting list to get into senior facilities. And then environmental issues, there was a lot done, and the governor actually did a pretty good job for New York Heat. We wanted to see all of it. I don't know we put all of it back in our one house. I know the Senate did. So we're going to continue to make sure that people can actually afford the energy that's coming to them, and also look to really make sure that we're moving our in the direction of a cleaner environment and making decisions that actually protect our environment as we build, and as we consider the impacts on water quality and infrastructure and all of the things that we need to do basically to keep up with the changing climate. Also, Medicaid has been a big concern of ours, and we do think that we have a path forward for a better way to restore Medicaid to reimbursements to what they were, but also for how we can fund them with the help of the federal government. And again, roads. We certainly put a lot of money back in. We restored the CHIPS funding. We restored all of the different programs for our roads and bridges, and even added back to it. And we're hoping that those numbers will stick. So I don't know if I addressed everything, but if you do have any questions, maybe Victoria, can you just let people know how they can get in touch with us, so that they can make sure that they get their concerns heard, or if they have any follow-up questions to this podcast?
Yeah, before we do that, I do just want to mention that if you listen to this and you want to get involved and help us out in the district office, we are always looking for volunteers, whether it be high school and college students who are looking to volunteer as an intern, especially over the summer. We have our summer intern application up on our website. We do also welcome volunteers who may be retired, looking to help out, looking to get involved in their community. Those are both really great ways to come and help out with community events or outreach to constituents. We're a small team, and so we appreciate any help we can get from the community. And for our young people, it's a really great way to get your foot in the door and get involved in government and see what it's like to work in the public sector, and consider that for your future. That's how I got started as an intern for Assemblywoman Galiff. So I will remind you that our phone number is the same as Assemblywoman Galiff's. I've had this number memorized since I was probably 14 years old. It's 914-941-1111. You can call us if you have a question, or if you need help with something. If you have a comment on a piece of legislation or another local district issue, really the best way to get in touch with us is to use the comment form on our website. You can also email our main email box, which is levenbergd@nyassembly.gov. All of our staff receive that email on our computers. And so we'll all see it. But we do also like to be very transparent and make sure everybody knows how to contact all of the staff members that work in our office. So if you want to reach out to me directly, or Acacia directly, or our staff in Albany, we do have our direct contact information available on our website to make it easy for you to know who to reach out to directly. Sometimes you can get a little bit of a faster response if you email us directly, as Acacia mentioned, with 1,000 emails coming in a month to that main inbox. It's sometimes a little easier to reach us directly.
That's just constituents, and there's also the other
that's true.
tiers of people that we deal with. We get thousands and thousands of emails every month.
Yes. So
and the only other thing that I would also say is that, if you do have something you want to come in person and meet with us, and you can't get down to Ossining, that we do have, which is where our district office is, we do have mobile office hours where Acacia and Victoria, and sometimes we have somebody new coming into our office, are making their way sort of around the district. So periodically you will be in Croton or Yorktown or Cortland or Peekskill or Cold Spring in town of Phillipstown, and really be there so people can come in, they can bring their papers, they can sit down and talk to a person face to face. And if that's something that makes it easier for you, we try to make it easier for you by coming to you. So we also have that information in our e-blast, which if you didn't sign up for, you can certainly sign up for by going to the website. And I don't know if we're able to put any of those things also in the podcast, but anything that we can put up, we will, and let you know just how you can get in touch and stay in touch with us, learn about what's going on in the state, keep up to date with legislation and everything else that comes out of Albany to the best of our ability. We like to share that with you, and we like to be able to be responsive to you too. So also look for our mailings that we send out a few times a year. We do send out surveys, and we host town hall meetings a couple times a year too, and sometimes on different subjects throughout the year. So hopefully, this has been helpful to respond to some of the most frequently asked questions from our constituents. And again, please do reach out. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any great ideas for legislation. We are all ears and look forward to being back in touch. And that's really all for this episode of Building Healthy Communities. Until next time, so please be safe and have a great day, week, and the rest of your month or year, whatever you're watching this. Thank you.